I stood in front of the warehouse on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, staring at a padlocked door and realizing that £500,000 of my life savings had vanished into thin air. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as I tried the lock one more time, as if persistence could somehow change the reality of what I was looking at. This was supposed to be the warehouse storing inventory for Kanya's boutique import business, the business I had invested £500,000 in over 10 months, believing I was helping the woman I loved build her dream. The previous 2 times I had visited, the warehouse had been locked with signs posted about temporary renovations and inventory reorganization. Kanya had been apologetic, explaining that the timing was unfortunate, that suppliers were unreliable, that the business world in Thailand moved differently than in England. But I had grown suspicious. The excuses were too convenient, the delays too consistent. So I had come unannounced this time, taking a taxi from my condominium in the city center without telling Kanya I was coming. And now, standing in front of this industrial building in a neighborhood I barely knew, I understood the devastating truth. There was no boutique import business. There never had been. The warehouse was empty, not temporarily closed for renovations, but completely abandoned. Through a grimy window, I could see the vast, empty space inside, dust covering the concrete floor, no sign that any inventory or business equipment had ever been stored here. I pulled out my phone and tried calling Kanya. The number went directly to voicemail, just as it had for the past 3 days since she had stopped responding to my messages. I tried her apartment, the flat I had helped her lease in a nice part of Chiang Mai. The landlord informed me that Kanya had moved out 2 weeks earlier, leaving no forwarding address. My hands were shaking as I leaned against the warehouse wall, trying to process what was happening. I am Mark Patterson, 61 years old, a successful property developer who spent 40 years building and selling residential projects across northern England. I had negotiated complex deals, navigated difficult markets, survived the 2008 financial crisis, and accumulated £900,000 through decades of smart business decisions. I had always believed I was too clever, too experienced, too aware of human nature to ever fall victim to a scam. When other expats in Chiang Mai would share stories about being cheated by Thai women, I would nod sympathetically while thinking privately that those men had been fools, lonely, desperate fools who let their emotions override their judgment. But Kanya had been different. She was not a bar girl or a massage worker. She was educated, cultured, independently successful. She had mocked gold diggers and scammers, making me believe she was genuine. She had challenged me intellectually, teased me playfully, made me feel young and vital in ways I had not felt since my wife Sarah died from cancer 5 years earlier. And now, standing in front of an empty warehouse that represented the destruction of everything I had worked for, I understood that I had been the fool all along. Kanya had identified my pride as my greatest vulnerability and had exploited it with extraordinary skill. She had not targeted my loneliness or my need for companionship. She had targeted my confidence, making me believe I was too smart to be scammed while she systematically stole £500,000. I had arrived in Thailand 11 months earlier believing I was starting a new chapter after years of grief and isolation. Instead, I had walked directly into the most sophisticated and devastating trap of my entire life. And the woman responsible had vanished completely, leaving behind nothing except empty buildings, forged documents, and a broken man who would spend the rest of his days trying to understand how someone so intelligent could have been so thoroughly deceived. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. My name is Mark Patterson, and I need to tell you how I lost £500,000 to a woman who understood me better than I understood myself. I was born in Liverpool in 1964, growing up in a working-class neighborhood where ambition was viewed with suspicion and success was something that happened to other people. But I had always been different, more driven, more willing to take calculated risks, more convinced that life offered opportunities if you were smart enough to recognize them. I left school at 18 and immediately entered the construction industry, starting as a laborer on residential building sites. The work was brutal, but I was learning how property development actually worked, not from textbooks, but from watching developers make decisions about land acquisition, construction costs, and market timing. By my late 20s, I had saved enough to purchase my first property, a rundown terrace house in a declining Liverpool neighborhood that I renovated and sold for a modest profit. That success led to another purchase, then another, and gradually I built a small property development business that specialized in identifying undervalued residential properties, renovating them, and selling or renting them at market rates. Patterson Property Development grew steadily over 3 decades. I was not building massive commercial projects or luxury estates. My focus was solidly middle-class housing in northern England, the kind of sensible properties that working families could afford. But the business was profitable, and by my 50s, I had accumulated genuine wealth. I married Sarah when I was 32. She was a school teacher I met through mutual friends, intelligent and practical in ways that balanced my risk-taking personality. We never had children. Both of us were focused on careers, and somehow the timing never seemed right. But we built a good life together, a comfortable home in Formby, holidays in Spain and France, the kind of middle-class stability I had not grown up with. Then, in 2018, Sarah was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. The disease progressed aggressively despite treatment, and she died in 2020 after 2 years of suffering that I felt helpless to prevent. Her death devastated me in ways I had not anticipated. We had been married 28 years, and suddenly I was alone in a house filled with memories of a life that no longer existed. I continued running Patterson Property Development for 2 years after Sarah died, but my heart was not in it. The work that had once excited me felt meaningless. I would sit in meetings discussing construction costs and market trends, and all I could think was that none of it mattered, that I was building wealth for a future that held nothing except more loneliness. In 2022, I made the decision to semi-retire. I sold Patterson Property Development to a larger firm for £450,000 and consolidated my other investments and savings. The total was approximately £900,000 more than enough to fund a comfortable retirement if managed carefully. But retirement to what? Sitting alone in my Formby house, watching television, playing golf with other lonely widowers, existing without actually living? The idea of moving to Thailand came from a conversation with an old business associate named Colin, who had relocated to Chiang Mai several years earlier. He spoke enthusiastically about the lifestyle, warm weather, low cost of living, welcoming expatriate community, and yes, the possibility of finding companionship with Thai women who appreciated older Western men. I was skeptical initially. I had heard stories about Western men being scammed in Thailand, and I was not interested in becoming a cliché. But Colin insisted that Chiang Mai was different from Pattaya or Bangkok, more cultured, less focused on sex tourism, attracting a higher class of expatriates. "Mark, you're going to rot away in England if you stay," Colin told me during a phone call. "You're 60 years old, you have plenty of money, and you're spending your days alone feeling sorry for yourself. Come to Chiang Mai for a few months, see if you like it. If you hate it, you can go back, but at least try something different." In December 2023, I boarded a flight to Bangkok, then connected to Chiang Mai. I had rented a condominium in the Nimman area for 3 months, while I explored whether Thailand would become my permanent home. When the plane landed in Chiang Mai, I felt something I had not experienced in years' anticipation. Not excitement exactly, but a sense that maybe, possibly, there was still something worth looking forward to in whatever years I had remaining. What I did not know, what I could never have anticipated, was that within 2 months, I would meet a woman who would make me believe I had finally found the companionship I desperately needed. And that woman would exploit my intelligence, my pride, and my confidence to systematically rob me of £500,000 while making me believe I was too clever to ever fall for such a scheme. I spent my first 6 weeks in Chiang Mai, establishing routines and exploring the city. Colin introduced me to other British expatriates, and I attended informal gatherings at pubs and restaurants, where retired Western men discussed property prices, visa regulations, and the challenges of adapting to Thai culture. I liked Chiang Mai immediately. The city felt manageable, large enough to offer amenities and culture, but small enough to navigate easily. The old city, with its ancient temples and walking streets, felt genuinely historical rather than manufactured for tourists. The food was excellent, the cost of living was absurdly cheap compared to England, and the weather was paradise after Liverpool winters. But I noticed something that made me uncomfortable. Many of the expatriate men I met were dating or living with Thai women 20 or 30 years younger, women who had limited education, worked in bars or massage parlors, and were obviously with these men for financial security rather than genuine affection. I found these relationships depressing. The women were performing a service, the men were paying for companionship, and everyone pretended it was romance. I swore to myself that I would never become one of those men, lonely old foreigners, buying the simulation of love because they were too desperate or too foolish to recognize what was really happening. In late January 2024, Colin invited me to an art gallery opening in the Niman area. A local Thai artist was exhibiting contemporary paintings, and Colin thought it would be a good opportunity to meet more sophisticated expatriates, people interested in culture, rather than just cheap beer and young girlfriends. The gallery was small but elegant, with white walls displaying abstract paintings in vibrant colors. About 40 people attended, a mixture of Thai professionals, Western expatriates, and a few obvious tourists. I felt immediately more comfortable than I had at the pub gatherings Colin had taken me to previously. I was examining a painting, geometric shapes in blues and greens that somehow suggested water and sky, when a woman's voice beside me said in perfect English, "That one is my favorite too. The colors remind me of the ocean in the south." I turned to see a Thai woman, perhaps early 30s, with an intelligent face and understated elegance. She wore a simple black dress and minimal jewelry, and she carried herself with confidence that suggested education and professional success rather than the tentative manner I associated with bar workers trying to attract foreign men. "I was thinking the same thing," I replied, "though I cannot decide if it is meant to be abstract or if I am just not sophisticated enough to recognize what it actually represents." She laughed genuinely. "I think that is the artist's intention, to make us uncertain whether we are seeing something real or something imagined. I am Kanya, by the way." "Mark," I said, extending my hand. "First time at this gallery. Friend invited me. Said it would be more interesting than the usual expat gatherings." "Let me guess," Kanya said with a slight smile. "Your usual expat gatherings involve men discussing bargirl dramas and complaining about visa regulations?" I laughed, appreciating her directness. Disturbingly accurate assessment. We began talking, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the conversation in ways I had not experienced since arriving in Thailand. Kanya was intelligent and articulate, with opinions about art, Thai politics, and the expatriate community that felt thoughtful rather than rehearsed. She told me she managed a boutique in Niman that sold locally designed clothing and accessories. She had studied business at Chiang Mai University, worked in Bangkok for several years, then returned to Chiang Mai because she preferred the slower pace and cultural authenticity. "Bangkok is all about money and status," Kanya explained. "Everyone is trying to impress everyone else. In Chiang Mai, you can still have a real-life friends you genuinely like, work that means something beyond just making money." I shared my background, the property development business in England, losing Sarah to cancer, deciding to try something different rather than rotting away alone in Liverpool. Kanya listened attentively, asking intelligent questions and offering observations that suggested she actually cared about what I was saying rather than just waiting for her turn to talk. When I mentioned that many expats I had met were dating much younger Thai women in obviously transactional relationships, Kanya shook her head with visible disgust. "I hate that," she said emphatically. "These women give all Thai women terrible reputation. They pretend to love these old men, take their money, then complain that foreigners only see Thai women as prostitutes. It is embarrassing for those of us who actually have education and careers." This statement resonated deeply with me. Kanya was articulating exactly what I had been thinking, that there was a fundamental difference between women who sought relationships for financial gain and women who had their own professional success and were interested in genuine connection. We talked for nearly 2 hours at the gallery, long after most other guests had left. Kanya mentioned several other cultural events happening in Chiang Mai, traditional dance performances, concerts, food festivals, and I found myself hoping she would suggest we attend something together. When we were preparing to leave, Kanya glanced at my watch, a Rolex I had purchased years earlier to celebrate a particularly successful property sale. "That is a beautiful watch," she said casually. "I like men who appreciate quality without needing to show off. Most foreigners here wear fake Rolexes and think Thai people cannot tell the difference." I was flattered by this observation. Kanya had not focused on the watch's expense but on its authenticity and what she perceived as my understated confidence. I bought it to celebrate a business success years ago, I explained. Wearing it reminds me of what I was able to accomplish through hard work. That is a good reason, Kanya said approvingly. Much better than men who buy expensive things to impress women they do not even know. We exchanged phone numbers, and Kanya suggested we meet for coffee later that week if I was interested. I assured her I was very interested, and we parted with genuine warmth rather than the awkward uncertainty I had felt after other social interactions in Thailand. Walking back to my condominium that evening, I felt something I had not experienced in years: hope. Not just about finding companionship, but about finding someone who seemed to respect me as an equal rather than seeing me as a financial opportunity. What I did not understand was that the entire encounter had been carefully orchestrated. Kanya had not randomly approached me at the gallery. She had been watching me since I entered, evaluating whether I fit the profile of her preferred targets. My age, my expensive watch, my obvious discomfort with the bar scene, and my intellectual confidence all suggested I was ideal for the sophisticated scam she specialized in. Kanya's disdain for gold diggers and her emphasis on education and independence were strategic rather than genuine. She understood that men like me, successful, intelligent, proud, would never fall for obvious schemes, but we were vulnerable to more sophisticated manipulation that appealed to our belief that we were too smart to be deceived. The trap had been set with extraordinary skill, and I had walked into it eagerly, grateful to finally meet a woman who seemed different from all the others I had dismissed as obviously mercenary. Over the next 6 weeks, Kanya and I saw each other several times a week. We attended concerts at the cultural center, visited temples where she would explain Buddhist philosophy and Thai history, and ate at local restaurants where she would order dishes I had never heard of and laugh at my reactions to unfamiliar flavors. What made Kanya different from any woman I had dated, including Sarah, was her ability to challenge me intellectually. She would disagree with my opinions about Thai politics or economics, present counter-arguments I had not considered, and make me defend positions I had assumed were self-evidently correct. These conversations were exhilarating. I felt mentally engaged in ways I had not experienced in years. Kanya also teased me about my expatriate lifestyle in ways that felt affectionate rather than critical. "You are living like a tourist," she said one evening after I mentioned eating at the same Western restaurant for the 3rd time that week. "If you are going to be in Thailand, you should actually experience Thailand real food, real culture, not the sanitized version for foreigners who are afraid of everything unfamiliar." I appreciated this directness. Kanya was treating me like an equal capable of handling criticism, rather than like a fragile old man whose ego needed constant protection. By March, we had become physically intimate, and I found myself falling in love with Kanya in ways I had not thought possible after Sarah's death. She was not trying to replace Sarah. The relationships were completely different, but Kanya made me feel vital and engaged with life, rather than simply existing until death. One evening in late March, as we sat on my condominium balcony overlooking the city, Kanya said thoughtfully, "I have been thinking about starting my own business, not just managing someone else's boutique, but creating something that is truly mine." I asked what kind of business she had in mind. Kanya explained that she wanted to create an import-export company focused on Thai handicrafts, traditional textiles, ceramics, wood carvings, selling them to boutique shops in Europe and North America that wanted authentic Asian products rather than mass-produced garbage from Chinese factories. "There is real market for this," Kanya explained enthusiastically. "I have been researching European boutiques, and they all want unique products with authentic stories. Thai artisans make beautiful things, but they have no way to access international markets. I could be the bridge, connect Thai craftspeople with European buyers, create fair trade relationships that actually help villagers earn decent income." The business concept was intelligent and socially responsible. I could see genuine passion in Kanya's eyes as she described visiting villages in northern Thailand, meeting artisans who created extraordinary handicrafts but earned almost nothing because middlemen captured most of the value. "The problem is capital," Kanya continued. "I need to purchase inventory from artisans, arrange international shipping, market to European boutiques. I have maybe £50,000 saved, but that is not enough to do this properly. I would need at least £200,000 to launch effectively." I saw where this conversation was heading, and my immediate instinct was caution. Lending money to romantic partners was almost always a terrible idea, and I had heard too many stories about Western men funding Thai girlfriends' business ventures that turned out to be scams. But Kanya seemed to sense my hesitation. "I am not asking you for money," she said quickly. "I know what you are thinking. Another Thai woman trying to get money from a foreigner. But I am not that person. I will find funding somewhere else, maybe a bank loan or Thai investors. I just wanted to share my idea with you because you have business experience and I value your opinion." This statement disarmed my skepticism completely. Kanya was explicitly acknowledging the risk I was worried about and assuring me she would not ask for financial help. By doing so, she had transformed our conversation from a request for money into a discussion between business equals. "I think the concept is excellent," I told Kanya honestly. "Thai handicrafts definitely have market in Europe if positioned correctly. The challenge will be logistics, managing inventory, coordinating shipments, building relationships with both artisans and buyers. But if you can execute well, this could be genuinely successful." We talked for another hour about business strategy, and I found myself offering advice based on my decades of experience in property development, how to manage cash flow, negotiate with suppliers, build customer relationships. Kanya listened carefully and asked intelligent questions that demonstrated she was genuinely thinking about implementation rather than just entertaining a fantasy. Several days later, Kanya mentioned she had met with a potential Thai investor who had expressed interest in funding her handicraft business. "But I do not trust him," she said with obvious frustration. "He wants 60% ownership in exchange for funding. That means I would be working for him, not building my own business. It defeats the entire purpose." I felt sympathy for Kanya's situation. She had a genuinely good business idea, but was being exploited by investors who recognized her lack of capital and wanted to capture most of the value she would create. "What if I invested?" I heard myself saying, surprising even myself, "not as a loan, but as a proper business partnership. You would maintain majority ownership, say 60%, and I would take 40% as a silent partner who provides capital, but is not involved in daily operations. That way you control your business, but you have the funding to do it properly." Kanya looked shocked. "Mark, I cannot ask you to do that. It is too much money, and business investments are risky. What if it fails? I would feel terrible about losing your money." "You are not asking, I am offering," I said firmly. "And yes, it is risky, but calculated risks are how wealth gets created. I have spent my entire career investing in properties that other people thought were too risky. I see genuine potential in your handicraft concept, and I want to be part of building something meaningful." I could see Kanya struggling with the decision, clearly torn between wanting the capital and not wanting to be seen as using me for money. Finally, she said, "If we do this, it has to be completely professional. Legal contracts, clear ownership structure, regular financial reporting. I do not want you to ever think I am taking advantage of you." This insistence on formal business structure further convinced me that Kanya was genuine. A scammer would have accepted the money with minimal documentation. Kanya was demanding exactly the protections I would have insisted on anyway. In April 2024, I transferred £200,000 to a Thai business account that Kanya established for her company, which she named Siam Heritage Imports. She showed me legal documents establishing the company's structure, ownership percentages, and my status as a silent partner, with rights to financial statements and profit distributions. Looking back now, I understand that those documents were sophisticated forgeries, created specifically to make me believe the business was legitimate. The Thai lawyer who supposedly handled the paperwork was part of Kanya's network. The business registration was real enough to pass casual inspection, but structured in ways that gave me no actual legal rights to capital I had invested. But at the time, I felt proud and excited. I was not just funding a girlfriend's fantasy, I was making a legitimate business investment with someone I loved and trusted. And Kanya's insistence on formal structure confirmed my belief that she was fundamentally different from the gold diggers I had been warned about. The trap was closing around me, and I remained completely oblivious, too proud of my own intelligence to recognize that I was being played by someone far more sophisticated than I had ever imagined possible. Over the next 3 months, Kanya kept me updated on the progress of Siam Heritage Imports through regular reports that seemed genuine and detailed. She showed me photographs of inventory she had supposedly purchased from artisans in Chiang Rai and Lampang, beautiful silk scarves, intricate wood carvings, hand-painted ceramics. She introduced me to people she claimed were suppliers and shipping coordinators. She discussed challenges with export paperwork and finding reliable freight companies. Everything appeared legitimate. More importantly, Kanya seemed genuinely stressed about the work involved in launching the business. She would come to my condominium exhausted after long days visiting artisan villages or negotiating with shipping companies. She would share frustrations about suppliers who did not deliver on time or European boutiques that were difficult to communicate with. This apparent stress actually strengthened my belief in the business's authenticity. A scammer would have pretended everything was perfect, right? Kanya's willingness to share problems suggested she was managing a real enterprise with real complications. In June, Kanya told me we had encountered a significant problem. The Thai government had implemented new export regulations requiring additional licensing and tax payments for companies exporting handicrafts internationally. The total cost would be approximately £100,000, and without paying these fees, Siam Heritage could not legally ship products to Europe. "I am so frustrated," Kanya said, visibly upset. "I have already invested so much time and work into building relationships with artisans and European buyers. Now the government is creating barriers that make it almost impossible for small businesses to export. Large companies can afford these fees, but small companies like mine get crushed." I asked if there were ways to challenge the regulations or seek exemptions. Kanya explained that she had consulted with lawyers, but the regulations were clear and applied to all export businesses, regardless of size. "I do not want to ask you for more money," Kanya said carefully. "You have already invested so much, but without paying these licensing fees, the entire business will fail before it even starts. All the inventory I purchased, all the relationships I built, everything will be wasted." I could see that Kanya was genuinely torn. She was not pressuring me, but she was sharing a real business problem that threatened our investment, and she was right. Abandoning the business now would mean losing the initial £200,000 I had already invested. "How confident are you that the business will succeed if we pay these fees?" I asked. Kanya showed me projected financial statements and correspondence from European boutiques expressing strong interest in purchasing inventory. "I am confident," she said. "The market exists, the products are excellent, and I have buyers ready to purchase. The only barrier is government bureaucracy. If we can overcome that, this business will be profitable within a year." I decided to invest the additional £100,000. It was a significant amount, 1/3 of my remaining liquid savings, but it seemed like a necessary expense to protect the investment I had already made. In business, sometimes you have to increase your capital investment to salvage projects that encounter unexpected obstacles. Kanya was grateful, but also insistent that this would be the final capital requirement. "After this, the business will be self-sustaining," she promised. "Revenue from sales will cover all operating expenses. You will not need to invest anything more." In July, Kanya told me the licensing fees had been paid and that we could now legally export to Europe. She showed me government documents entirely in Thai that supposedly confirmed Siam Heritage imports had met all regulatory requirements. But then came another complication. The warehouse where inventory was being stored had been damaged by flooding during monsoon rains. Much of the inventory had been ruined by water damage, and insurance would not cover the loss because the warehouse company had not properly maintained flood protection systems. "I need to replace the damaged inventory," Kanya explained, clearly devastated by this setback, "and I need to find a better warehouse with proper protection systems. The total cost will be about £120,000, £80,000 for inventory replacement, and £40,000 for securing proper warehouse space." I was beginning to feel uneasy about the escalating costs. When I had initially invested, Kanya had said £200,000 would be sufficient. Now we were approaching £420,000 in total investment, and the business still had not generated any revenue. "I understand if you do not want to invest more," Kanya said when she sensed my hesitation. "This has been much more expensive and complicated than either of us anticipated. But we are so close to launching. The European buyers are ready, the export licenses are in place, and once we replace this inventory, we can finally start generating revenue." I expressed concern about continuing to invest without seeing any return. Kanya completely understood, and she suggested I visit the warehouse and meet suppliers directly so I could verify that the business was real and the problems were legitimate rather than fabricated. This suggestion again disarmed my skepticism. If Kanya were running a scam, she would not want me inspecting warehouses or meeting suppliers. Her willingness to show me everything suggested the business was genuine, and the complications were just unfortunate but real challenges. In late July, I visited the warehouse on the outskirts of Chiang Mai. It was a large industrial building in a business park, and there was a sign indicating temporary renovations were underway. Kanya explained that they were upgrading the facility to prevent future flooding issues, so I could not go inside, but she assured me inventory was being stored there and would be ready to ship once renovations completed. I accepted this explanation because I wanted to believe it. Looking back, I should have insisted on entering the warehouse, demanded to see actual inventory, and verified that products existed beyond the photographs Kanya had shown me. But I was too invested financially and emotionally to question too aggressively. In August, I transferred another £120,000, bringing my total investment to £420,000. Kanya showed me paperwork, supposedly confirming that inventory had been purchased and the warehouse secured. We were supposed to launch sales in September. European boutiques were expecting shipments. Everything was finally ready. But September came and went with no launches. Kanya had new explanations. Shipping companies were backlogged. European customs had created unexpected delays. Buyers wanted to see samples before committing to large orders. Each explanation sounded plausible, and Kanya seemed as frustrated as I was about the delays. In October, I told Kanya I wanted to visit the warehouse again. I needed to see actual inventory, meet actual employees, and verify that the business I had invested nearly £500,000 in actually existed as more than just paperwork and promises. Kanya agreed immediately. We scheduled a visit for the following week, but when that week came, Kanya called saying she was sick and needed to postpone. Then, her mother supposedly had a health emergency that required Kanya to travel to her home village for several days. Then, the warehouse manager was unavailable because of a family funeral. The excuses accumulated, and my suspicions deepened. I decided to visit the warehouse unannounced, without telling Kanya I was coming, without warning anyone. I would simply show up, demand to see inside, and finally verify what I had invested in. That decision led me to standing in front of a padlocked door, staring at an empty building, and realizing that I had been systematically defrauded by the woman I loved and trusted. Standing outside that empty warehouse, I felt my entire worldview shattering. I had built my identity around being intelligent, skeptical, too smart to be manipulated. I had looked down on other expats who fell for obvious scams, believing I was fundamentally different because of my education and business experience. Now I understood that intelligence meant nothing against someone who understood human psychology better than I understood myself. Kanya had not targeted my stupidity, she had targeted my pride. She had made me believe I was too clever to be scammed, and that belief had made me ignore every warning sign. I tried calling Kanya repeatedly as I stood outside the warehouse, but her number went straight to voicemail. I tried messaging her online, WhatsApp, and Facebook, no responses. I drove to her apartment in Niman and discovered from the building's security that she had moved out 2 weeks earlier, leaving no forwarding information. I went to the boutique where Kanya supposedly worked. The owner told me that Kanya had worked there briefly 6 months earlier, but had been fired for stealing money from the cash register. Every piece of Kanya's life that I had believed was real turned out to be fabrication. The cultured, educated, independently successful woman I thought I knew had never existed. She was a professional scammer who had played a role perfectly for 10 months while systematically robbing me. I filed a police report, bringing all the documentation I had, business registration papers, investment contracts, bank transfer records. The police officer listened sympathetically but was not encouraging about recovery prospects. "This is a very complicated situation," the officer explained. "You voluntarily transferred money to Thai business for investment. Very difficult to prove this is criminal fraud, and not just business that failed or partnership that ended badly. We will investigate, but I must be honest, usually in these cases, money is gone and person has disappeared." I hired a lawyer who provided more detailed but equally discouraging assessment. The business registration for Siam Heritage Imports was real, but Kanya had structured ownership in ways that gave her complete control despite the supposed partnership agreement. The licensing fees and warehouse costs I had paid were either paid to shell companies Kanya controlled or never paid at all. The documents showing government approvals and warehouse contracts were sophisticated forgeries. The fundamental problem, my lawyer explained, is that everything appears voluntary on paper. You chose to invest in a business. You chose to provide additional capital when problems arose. Unless we can prove Kanya had criminal intent from the beginning to steal your money, rather than actually operating a business, this will be treated as a civil dispute rather than a criminal fraud case. The lawyer suggested we could pursue civil litigation, but the costs would be substantial, and recovery was uncertain, given that Kanya had presumably moved money offshore or distributed it among her network. I also hired a private investigator who specialized in romance scams. What he discovered was devastating. Kanya Bunraksa was not her real name, or at minimum, it was just one of several identities she used. She was part of an organized network that specialized in targeting wealthy expatriate men through sophisticated business investment scams rather than crude gold digger schemes. The investigator found evidence of at least 4 other victims over the past 3 years: a Canadian man who had invested in a supposedly similar handicraft business, an Australian who had funded a restaurant venture, a German who had invested in a gemstone export business. Each victim had lost between $200,000 and $600,000, and none had successfully prosecuted Kanya or recovered their money. Most devastatingly, the investigator showed me evidence that Kanya had been running parallel scams with multiple men simultaneously. While she was cultivating a relationship with me, she had also been in relationships with at least 2 other foreign men, each believing they were in an exclusive partnership while she extracted money from all of them. These networks are very sophisticated, the investigator explained. They research targets carefully, identify psychological vulnerabilities, and execute scams specifically designed for each victim's personality. For you, they targeted your pride and your business confidence. They made you believe you were too smart to be scammed, which made you vulnerable to a more sophisticated scam that appealed to your belief in your own intelligence. The investigator also explained that by the time victims realized they had been scammed, Kanya and her network had usually already moved money through multiple accounts, often offshore to countries with bank secrecy laws that made tracing nearly impossible. "You will almost certainly never recover your money," he told me bluntly. "These networks are too good at hiding assets and disappearing when scams are completed. I am sorry to tell you this, but you need to accept that the money is gone and focus on protecting whatever assets you have remaining." About 2 weeks after discovering the warehouse was empty, I received an unexpected email from a man named David Chen, a Canadian who explained he had been another victim of Kanya's network. David had seen my name mentioned in a private Facebook group for romance scam victims and wanted to share information. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Chiang Mai. David was 57, a former software engineer who had retired early and moved to Thailand. His story was remarkably similar to mine meeting Kanya at a cultural event, being impressed by her education and independence, gradually being convinced to invest in a business venture that turned out to be completely fraudulent. "I invested 380,000 Canadian dollars, David told me, his voice still carrying the shock of someone processing a devastating loss. She told me she was starting a company that would export Thai furniture to North American boutiques. Everything seemed legitimate: business plans, supplier contacts, warehouse facilities. Then one day she just vanished, and I discovered none of it had ever been real." What made David's story particularly disturbing was the timeline. His relationship with Kanya had occurred in 2023, approximately 6 months before mine began. This meant Kanya had successfully executed nearly identical scams on multiple victims, refining her approach each time. "I reported everything to Canadian authorities and Thai police," David said. "Nobody cared. Canadian police said it was a foreign matter they had no jurisdiction over. Thai police said it looked like a business dispute, not a criminal matter. I hired lawyers, investigators, everyone I could think of. All of them told me the money was gone, and Kanya had probably left Thailand." David showed me photographs Kanya had sent him during their relationship, pictures of supposed business meetings, warehouse facilities, inventory. Many of the same locations appeared in photographs Kanya had sent me, suggesting she had created a library of convincing images to use with multiple victims. David also showed me a notebook he had compiled with information about Kanya's network. Through his own investigation and conversations with other victims, he had identified several other people who appeared to be working with Kanya: the supposed lawyer who handled business registrations, the warehouse manager who was always unavailable, the artisan suppliers who turned out not to exist. This is not one person acting alone, David explained. It is an organized operation, with multiple people playing different roles. Kanya is the relationship builder who cultivates trust. Other people handle logistics like creating fake documents, setting up shell companies, and laundering money. They have been doing this for years, probably making millions of dollars from victims who are too embarrassed to report what happened. I asked David why he thought Kanya targeted men like us, successful, educated, proud rather than obviously vulnerable, lonely men who might be easier targets. Because we have more money, and we are less likely to report the scam, David said. Lonely, desperate men might fall for simpler schemes, but they often do not have substantial savings to steal. Men like us have accumulated real wealth through business success, and we are too proud to admit we were deceived, so we suffer in silence rather than going public and looking foolish. This observation stung because it was absolutely true. I had not told my friends in England what happened because I was mortified that someone as intelligent as me had fallen for a scam. I had not posted in online forums or contacted media because I did not want anyone to know I had been such a fool. My pride, the same pride Kanya had exploited to steal my money, was now preventing me from doing anything that might help other potential victims avoid the same fate. David and I discussed whether we could coordinate with other victims to build a stronger case that might interest law enforcement in pursuing the network. But we acknowledged that even if we found a dozen victims willing to come forward, the practical challenges of international prosecution were enormous. I've spent the past year trying to get justice, David told me as we prepared to leave the coffee shop. I have filed reports with every authority I can think of, hired lawyers and investigators, even tried to interest journalists in the story. Nothing has worked. Kanya and her network are either too well connected or too skilled at hiding to ever face consequences. He paused, looking tired and defeated. The best I can do now is try to warn other men before they become victims. I have joined online forums where expats discuss Thailand, and whenever someone mentions meeting a sophisticated, educated Thai woman who seems different, I send them a private message warning them to be careful. Most ignore me, just like I would have ignored someone warning me a year ago, but maybe I save a few people. As I walked back to my condominium that day, I felt the full weight of what had happened. I had not just lost £420,000, nearly half my life savings. I had lost my belief in my own judgment, my confidence in my ability to read people and situations, and my faith that intelligence and experience could protect me from manipulation. Kanya had destroyed more than my finances. She had destroyed my entire sense of self. By December 2024, I had to accept several devastating realities. First, I would never recover the money Kanya had stolen. Second, I could no longer afford to remain in Thailand, maintaining the lifestyle I had been living. Third, I needed to return to England and rebuild whatever remained of my life with approximately £430,000, less than half of what I had when I first arrived in Chiang Mai. The decision to return felt like admitting complete defeat. I had come to Thailand seeking a new beginning after Sarah's death. Instead, I had experienced the most humiliating failure of my life. Returning to England meant facing everyone who had warned me about moving to Thailand, explaining what happened, and enduring their pity and judgment. I sold the condominium I had purchased in Niman. Thankfully, I had bought that property in my own name, rather than trusting Kanya with it for a modest profit that partially offset my losses from the scam. I sold most of my possessions, keeping only what would fit in 2 suitcases. Before leaving, I met with David one final time. He had decided to remain in Thailand, despite his losses, primarily because returning to Canada would be even more expensive, and he felt he had nothing to return to. I have accepted that this is where I will live now, David told me. I cannot afford to maintain the comfortable expat lifestyle anymore, but I can survive on my pension if I am careful. Thailand is still cheaper than Canada, even living modestly. I felt profound sadness for David trapped in Thailand, not by choice, but by lack of alternatives, spending whatever years he had remaining in the country where he had been systematically destroyed. I flew back to England in late December 2024, arriving in Liverpool during the coldest part of winter. The gray skies and freezing rain felt appropriate for my emotional state. My house in Formby was exactly as I had left it, filled with furniture and photographs from my life with Sarah, a museum of a past that felt impossibly distant. I had rented the house to tenants while in Thailand, so at least I still had a place to live, but it no longer felt like home. It felt like a tomb. I began the process of explaining to friends and family what had happened. Most reactions fell into two categories: sympathetic people who said I had been unlucky and should not blame myself, and judgmental people who asked how someone as intelligent as me could have fallen for such an obvious scam. Both responses were unbearable in different ways. The sympathy felt patronizing, as if people were treating me like a victim who needed protection rather than an adult capable of taking responsibility for terrible decisions. The judgment confirmed my worst fears, that everyone saw me as a foolish old man who had been seduced by a younger woman and paid an appropriate price for his vanity. My former business partner Colin, who had first encouraged me to move to Chiang Mai, was particularly devastated when I told him what happened. "I feel responsible," Colin said during a phone call. "I told you Chiang Mai was safe, that the women there were different. I did not realize these sophisticated scams existed." I assured Colin it was not his fault. Kanya would have found me eventually, regardless of how I ended up in Thailand. She was too skilled, and I was too proud, for the outcome to have been different. I am 61 years old now, writing this from my house in Formby, where I have lived for the past several months since returning from Thailand. I have approximately £430,000 remaining from the £900,000 I had when I semi-retired. That is enough to survive comfortably if I am careful, but it is not enough to maintain the lifestyle I had planned for retirement. I am not destitute like some of the other victims I have read about in online forums. I still have my house, my pension, and enough savings to survive. But I have lost more than half my wealth to a woman who played me perfectly for 10 months, while I congratulated myself on being too intelligent to fall for scams. The psychological damage has been worse than the financial loss. I suffer from depression and anxiety that I never experienced before Thailand. I struggle with insomnia, replaying conversations with Kanya in my mind and analyzing where I missed warning signs that should have been obvious. I see a therapist weekly who helps me process the shame and self-recrimination. She tries to help me understand that I am not uniquely foolish, that sophisticated scammers are skilled at exploiting human vulnerabilities, and that intelligence provides no protection against someone who understands psychology better than their victims understand themselves. But I still feel like a fool. I look back at decisions I made transferring £420,000 based on photographs and promises, accepting excuses about locked warehouses and temporary renovations, believing that Kanya's anger at gold diggers proved she was not one herself, and I cannot comprehend how someone with my business experience could have been so thoroughly deceived. The truth I am slowly accepting is that Kanya succeeded because she understood me better than I understood myself. She identified my pride as my greatest vulnerability and exploited it brilliantly. She made me believe I was too clever to be scammed, which made me vulnerable to a scam sophisticated enough to bypass my defenses. I thought I was special, different from the lonely, desperate men who fell for obvious bar girl schemes. I believed my intelligence and business experience made me immune to manipulation. That belief was my downfall, because it prevented me from recognizing that even intelligent people can be destroyed when they encounter someone more intelligent who understands human nature at a profound level. I have joined online support groups for romance scam victims, where I share my story and try to warn others about the sophisticated schemes that target confident, educated men rather than obviously vulnerable, lonely men. Most people dismiss my warnings, just as I would have dismissed someone warning me before I met Kanya. I am too smart to fall for that, they say, exactly as I once said, and I know that some of them will end up exactly where I am, financially and emotionally destroyed, trying to understand how someone so intelligent could have been so thoroughly deceived. Recently, I have been contacted by a journalist who is interested in writing about organized romance fraud networks in Southeast Asia. She wants to interview victims and investigators to expose the scale of these operations and pressure law enforcement to take them seriously as organized crime rather than dismissing them as relationship disputes. I have agreed to participate, though doing so means going public with the most humiliating experience of my life. But if sharing my story might prevent even a few other men from experiencing what I experienced, then perhaps some good can come from this disaster. I thought I was clever. That was my fundamental mistake. I looked at other expats in Thailand, lonely men dating obvious bar girls, sending money to families they had never met, believing in fantasies that were transparently false, and I felt superior. I would never fall for such obvious schemes because I was too intelligent, too experienced, too aware of human nature. Kanya understood this about me within minutes of our first conversation at the art gallery. She recognized my pride and built her entire scam around exploiting it. She did not present herself as a vulnerable woman who needed my help. She presented herself as my equal, educated, successful, independent, and she challenged me intellectually in ways that made me feel respected and engaged. She mocked gold diggers, making me believe she was fundamentally different. She insisted on formal business contracts and professional structure, making me believe the investment was legitimate. She showed frustration with setbacks and complications, making me believe she was managing a real business with real challenges rather than simply stealing my money. Every element of her performance was designed to bypass the defenses I had constructed through decades of business experience, and it worked perfectly because I never questioned the fundamental premise that I was too smart to be manipulated. The 420,000 pounds I lost, nearly half my life savings, is devastating but survivable. I can still afford to live modestly in England, maintain my house, and survive on my pension and remaining investments. I am not destitute, but the damage to my sense of self may never heal. I built my identity around being intelligent and skeptical. I prided myself on reading people accurately and recognizing manipulation. Discovering that I had been completely deceived by someone who understood me better than I understood myself has shattered my confidence in my own judgment. I no longer trust my ability to assess people or situations. I second-guess every decision, wondering if I am being manipulated without recognizing it. I avoid social situations because conversations with strangers trigger anxiety about hidden motives and deception. Kanya destroyed more than my finances. She destroyed my belief in myself. If I could give advice to other men considering retirement in Thailand, it would be this: your intelligence will not protect you. Your business experience will not protect you. Your ability to recognize obvious scams will not protect you from sophisticated scams designed specifically to exploit your confidence that you are too smart to be deceived. The most dangerous scams are not the obvious ones targeting desperate, lonely men. The most dangerous scams are the sophisticated ones targeting confident, intelligent men who believe they are immune to manipulation. Those scams succeed precisely because the victims are too proud to admit they might be vulnerable. I was that proud man, and I paid an enormous price for my pride. Kanya has never been found. The police investigation went nowhere. The lawyer told me civil litigation would be expensive and probably unsuccessful. The investigator told me the money was gone and I should focus on protecting whatever assets I had remaining. She is likely running the same scam on another victim right now, another intelligent, confident man who believes he is too clever to be deceived. She will identify his psychological vulnerabilities, craft a performance designed specifically for his personality, and systematically steal everything he has while he congratulates himself on being too smart to fall for scams. And when he finally realizes what has happened, he will stand somewhere alone, maybe in front of an empty warehouse, maybe in an abandoned apartment, and understand, too late, that intelligence meant nothing against someone who understood human psychology at a level he never imagined was possible. I thought I was clever. She was 10 times cleverer. If this story has opened your eyes to the sophistication of modern romance fraud in Thailand, please subscribe to this channel. Mark Patterson's experience represents a growing category of scams that target educated, successful men who believe their intelligence makes them immune to manipulation. These scams succeed precisely because victims are too proud to admit vulnerability. The more awareness we build, the fewer lives will be destroyed. Share this story with anyone planning to retire overseas, and remember, confidence can be your greatest vulnerability when you encounter someone skilled enough to exploit it. Thank you for watching.